Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual webinar with Lucy from Normal. So my name is Kirsten. I'm the CEO here at Birchal, and I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are calling in from today. So Birchal, and I believe Lucy as well, is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I am dialing in from the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation lands, and want to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also pay our respects as well to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us on the call today. So as you know, today we are joined by Lucy, who's the CEO and co-founder at Normal. Birchal is working with Normal on an upcoming crowdsourced funding offer. If any of you aren't familiar with crowdsourced funding, you might also have heard of it as equity crowdfunding. It's a form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller retail investors, as well as wholesale and sophisticated investors, through an online platform like Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources like banks or private equity or venture capital, companies can instead turn to their communities and the general public to raise money in exchange for those investors becoming shareholders in the business. So for founders, it's a way to turn their passionate supporters into shareholders. And for investors, it's a way for us to back founders and ideas that we want to see succeed. And when those ideas do succeed, we get a slice of that success as well. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. The information that we discuss on this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as advice or as a recommendation to invest. Neither Lucy nor I have considered any of your personal financial circumstances in coming to this webinar today, so please do your own research. Always consider the offer document and the general CSF risk warning before investing, and more information is available on our website, birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run, Lucy's going to take us through a quick presentation about the business that she and Georgia are building at Normal. I'll sort of jump in. We're going to do it as a bit of a conversation, the presentation, and then we'll move into a question and answer session once the presentation is over. If you have a look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen down there, you'll see a little Q&A box. So if you have questions while the presentation is happening or afterwards when we're in the Q&A part of the discussion, just drop them into that Q&A box and I will group them all together with similar questions and facilitate the discussion with Lucy. We are recording today's session, so if you do need to drop off early for any reason, a recording will be sent around and you can catch up on anything you miss after the meeting. So without further ado, Lucy, please tell us all about Normal.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, and thank you all for joining in the middle of your work days to talk about vibrators. As a former corporate consultant, nothing brings me more joy than managing to bring people together at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday to talk about sex, pleasure, and investing. And as Kirsten has said, I will keep this relatively high level, relatively conversational in the presentation, but obviously we have the Q&A section to talk through more questions. And if there's anything after that point, there are mechanisms via Birchal where you can ask more questions about the expression of interest and offer campaigns as well. So let me jump right in. Normal was created in 2021. We started working on the business in 2020, and our mission is creating the tools for a lifetime of great sex. And I think one of the things that's really worth just pausing on there is that we use the word tools quite deliberately, because I think one of the most important beliefs that we have at Normal is that when it comes to allowing people to explore something like sex toys, allowing them to explore new practices, new curiosities, to work on things that have challenged them when it comes to sex and intimacy and relationships. We are working in a space where a lot of us have grown up with shame, stigma, and silence about those topics. And so, yes, offering people a great physical product is a really important part of helping them to solve problems and to address needs that are important to them. But for Normal particularly, we focus on how can we speak to the whole person? How can we help that person overcome shame, stigma, How can we spark curiosity? How can we use tools like education, research, and advocacy alongside great physical products to create a holistic pathway into exploring more pleasure for more people? I think the other things that are kind of really important to note here is a lifetime of great sex. So, sex is not something that we all learn exactly how to do at 18 and then we stop evolving and it stops evolving for us. We are really interested in how we can support people across a lifetime with all of the challenges and opportunities that comes with. And I think finally, sort of when we think about our mission as a brand, I think we also try to think a little bit about how do we interact with the people and the society around us in positive ways as well. So I'll give you a little bit, when I say we, who is we? So our co-founding team is myself and Georgia Grace. This is when I had my hair done. Today it is not done. But we like to refer to ourselves as the business and the pleasure within Normal. So my background is I trained as a social scientist at the University of Cambridge and the University of Chicago, where I studied all sorts of things related to what makes human beings tick individually, how does social change happen, what allows us to change culture, and took a lot of those learnings into my next job, which was advising top Australian companies and government as a strategy consultant. So I'm working on business and operational questions for McKinsey & Company, and then finally into the startup world, where you get a really amazing opportunity to combine commercial thinking about how do you build great businesses and how do you achieve growth with social change and social impact thinking. And so that's been a kind of a through line in my career. I've also managed to, had the pleasure of working with a few great Australian consumer health tech brands, including Eucalyptus, which is now a unicorn. And I do a lot of work within the startup ecosystem on topics that are related to Normal's mission, like gender and sexual harassment as well. And my co-founder, Georgia, who I always think of as my better half, at least in the workplace, is the pleasure. She's not able to be here today, but I would recommend for anyone who's not seen her work before, pop onto Instagram after this and check out at G-Spot as a great example of Georgia's work, as well as checking out the work that she does with us on Normal. So Georgia is a passionate sex and relationship therapist and educator who works in session with individuals, couples, and groups. And she also trains new practitioners as one of the leading practitioners in Australia. She's also a best-selling author and podcaster and has her own large audience and profile related to this topic. So within Normal, think of me as tackling operations, finance, strategy, marketing, and Georgia as informing our educational work, advising on product design and making sure that we're doing things ethically and in a way that's body safe for every one of our consumers. So what is Normal? What is our approach? As a brand, we like to think of what we're building as a for-profit business which has a flywheel effect between the sales of our physical products and the social impact we can have through sex education, conversations, shaping research, and advocacy campaigns. So we, over the last 4 years, have built and are continuing to build a premium nightstand-friendly range of sex toys, essentials, so things like lubricants, cleaning sprays, body oils, accessories, for, tools for exploring kink as a beginner, conversation kits to help people have important conversations with themselves, their partners, and their friends about sex and other products. And I think something that's really important, you'll see throughout this presentation, obviously, an example of what our designs look like and how they look really different to a lot of the stereotypes that people imagine when they think of the sex space. So, porny and corny is the term we use internally, but we try to really make these products that you would be happy to have out on the nightstand, something that feels like it fits into your modern lifestyle and doesn't feel like something you need to hide or be ashamed of. I think something else that's really important to note is that when we are selling those products, we are also pairing them with a guided experience that's designed for someone who may have no sort of significant sex or pleasure education, who may have a lot of hang-ups or concerns about the space, to feel really comfortable in finding the right product for them. So whether it's a recommendation quiz, whether it's tons of free product education, whether it's tons of free non-product sex education, or even our 100-night stand returns policy, we really try to make sure that someone has an incredible experience every time with Normal and feels really comfortable without needing to assume any knowledge of the space. And that's probably part of why so many people buy their first toy with Normal. And the I think other piece of that that's really helpful to keep in mind is those social impact activities. So we see a real flywheel where essentially the two sides of the business do strengthen each other between the work we do in making and selling physical products and creating free, inclusive online sex education. That typically breaks out into long, sort of movie length video courses that are very high production values. So, products like our Modern Guide to Sex, which is our Everything You Should Have Learned in Sex Ed course, products like our Come Together course, which is designed for couples to tackle the most common issues related to stress, desire, and communication. Products like our body confidence course, which is addressing the single biggest challenge for Australian women when it comes to sex, which is actually body image, making it hard to enjoy sex. And of course, over 100 sort of sexual health expert reviewed guides, and our social media, which has been viewed tens of millions of times with lots of bite-sized video education, as well as research like the Big Sex Survey and advocacy campaigns on challenging censorship or helping people to vote on issues related to sex and reproductive health in elections. So we really try. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Lucy, sorry to interrupt. It might be worth talking a little bit more about this. As you know, I'm a big sucker for a business flywheel myself. But I know for Normal, it's not just the time that you put into making these resources, but it's also a hard cost to the business. So you put in 1% of the sales that you bring in into generating these resources that you then provide for free to the community. So can you talk a little bit more about how you see those two parts feeding each other, like not just coexisting, but how the flywheel is strengthened by having the both of the pieces together?
Yeah, great question. And I think one thing that I'll call out about that sort of 1% minimum of sales going into this is that part of why we choose to do sales, not profits, for example, is that often when businesses are scaling, they are scaling at break even or they're investing in growth, but will not be profitable up until a certain point. And so we wanted to make sure that our internal policy is very clear that we are always investing in this, even at points where we're still growing as a company. And I think to your question of like, how do these actually relate to each other really concretely, I think you can look at Normal and see a really great case to invest in it as a commercial investor. And you can also look at it if you're someone whose values aligned with this work and see that you get the commercial benefit and the values aligned benefit of investing in something like Normal. So for example, with our free online sex education, that has driven an increasing amount of time. Over time, our free online sex education has driven more and more of our website traffic. So effectively, sex is one of the most searched topics on Google. About 1 in 5 searches relate to sex. And so being able to create high quality resources that have a high quality score when Google is assessing those means that they show up, people discover the brand through those resources and then discover our products, shop with the brand as a result of those resources. And that same effect applies whether we're talking about our organic social media, where our educational content is a core high performing part of how we reach people without investing in paid marketing. To do so, it's a core part of not just how our customers discover the brand, but also what makes them decide to shop with us, what makes them decide to come back. Even between a first purchase and a second purchase, a customer receives tons of free email education from Normal that is engaging with concerns and curiosities that they actually have. So it keeps people engaged with our brand. And then it also is a great reason why people tell us they refer the brand to others, because they believe in that mission and identify with that mission, and they see it filling a gap that has not been filled by government sex education or by the sort of Dr. Google style education that you can find on the internet. So I think that's a really important thing to note, that effectively, our social impact activities actually help to support sales, and then those sales help to allow further investment in those social impact activities. And over time, we're trying to build a really comprehensive, free, inclusive online sex education library that anyone can access from anywhere in the world. So one of my favorite things is actually—
It's super cool. I was just going to say, like, what I really like about it is it both tells your customer, like it shows authenticity to your customer that you are who you say you are, but also it's educating your customer and potential customer about all of these assumptions that they have around sex and pleasure and toys that ultimately makes them more likely to buy from you in the future.
Absolutely. And I think as well, a couple of great examples, like please, by all means, if you're on the webinar, put your hand up if someone referred to the G spot in your sex education, but they definitely did not in mine. And I think for
Definitely didn't mine.
yeah, yeah, just the old condom on a banana. But certainly, what we find is a lot of consumers, in order to feel comfortable purchasing something, and a sex toy can be a bit of an investment as well. The price point is often $100 to $200. Need to understand the pleasure anatomy that they're talking about, need to understand how to actually stimulate it. So there is real value to teaching the gaps between the gaps in what was covered in sex education, and allowing that to boost demand for your products, as well as supporting a customer to use your products really well and have a better experience. Shall I jump on through, Kirsten?
Let's do it.
So I think to speak to the opportunity and the market that we play in, this is sort of globally about a $60 billion space currently, and is expected to grow 7% year on year to nearly $100 billion in 2030. And I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And often I think there's a tendency to underestimate the size of the sexual wellness market because of the stigma and silence around talking openly about topics like sex, intimacy, and relationships. But the underlying truth is that these are, sex is one of the few things that almost all humans have in common. And it's one of the few truly universal human needs, desires, and consumer markets. And because for many of us, either if we're just experiencing the desire for good or better sex, or if we're experiencing like blockers or issues, we particularly, I think, don't tend to share widely the fact that we are experiencing those blockers or issues. So it's really easy to feel alone and isolated in those experiences, and to underestimate the size of the market and the opportunity. So I think it's really helpful to actually be able to orient with a few statistics. For example, in Australia, there's something known as the gender orgasm gap, which is effectively the fact that Australian men report orgasming or climaxing nearly twice as often in partnered sex as women still. There's in Australia, if you sort of look at something like mental health issues, about 40 to 45% of Australians experience a mental health issue in their lifetime. Just under that amount experience a sexual dysfunction. And I think in a lot of ways, the sexual wellness market is where mental health was 1 to 2 decades ago as well. And you can also look at measures like satisfaction. Basically 1 in 10 Australians tell you that they're actually satisfied with their sex lives. And even really important issues like consent and communication, where we're finding that still, despite a lot of really amazing progress and change, like even recent graduates, a majority are saying they don't learn how to discuss consent and have healthy conversations with partners. So this is a space where that meta trend of stigma and silence about sex creates a ton of unsolved consumer issues, and that creates opportunity for brands to step in and offer better solutions. I think something that's really worth noting is that despite the size of this space, I think that stigma has also meant historically that sort of high quality capital, high quality operators, and lots of companies have stayed out of this space because they think it's too sensitive to go into. And that sort of means that, as of, even today, but I think particularly like 5-10 years ago, the options for shopping for a sex toy, like we always joke about it feeling like Pornhub meets Chemist Warehouse, that you end up in a situation where you have an overwhelming amount of choice. It feels like you're not given any information. It feels really outdated. It feels like something you should be embarrassed by or like close the tab on immediately. And I think that's a symptom of underinvestment into this space historically because of stigma. And that also drove a lot of consumers feeling hesitant to engage with the space, especially women and LGBTQ plus folks who often found that space seemed to be working from a male gaze or from a male perspective on pleasure as well. And it meant
high risk as well. If you're looking at this overwhelming menu that makes you feel a little bit ick and you don't know how to start to engage with what's actually going to work for me and what I'm looking to get out of this purchase.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as well, part of the reason why so much demand or so much of the sales in this space has traditionally taken place in adult retailers is that mainstream retailers haven't felt like they had trusted brands that they could stock in this space where they felt like it made sense for their audience and it wouldn't risk the rest of their audience as well. So I think when Normal is able to play as a direct to consumer brand in this space is we've really benefited from the increase in e-commerce, online shopping, discrete purchase and discrete delivery. So actually I think this is a category where we as a sort of online direct to consumer brand really benefit from the fact that most people prefer to buy sex toys on the internet. We also, I think, have benefited a lot from the fact that social media has created platforms and opportunities to have more open conversations about sex and pleasure, and that those have particularly for sort of Gen Z and millennials, particularly for female and LGBTQ populations, that's become a really important site of where those conversations are happening. And then I think there's also increasing awareness of things like the gender orgasm gap and the inequalities in pleasure that historically have occurred, and a desire to fix those things as well. And then all of that is, brands like Normal being available and proving out that there is a direct to consumer audience is also provoking increased interest from mainstream retailers in having a slice of the pie in sexual wellness too.
Yeah. And just to connect the dots here as well, like you touched on this, but just in case anyone missed it.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Normal ran a big survey which validated this point around the gender orgasm gap, which means for, heterosexual couples who might just assume, well, this is just a thing for us that impacts us, they can see themselves reflected in that number. They can start having conversations between themselves about how they can address it. And that might lead to kind of curiosity and exploration around other ways that they can sort of even out that the gap between the two of them.
Absolutely. And I can even go a little bit further there and say, like, one of the most important, like the two most important levers we have to make a difference in the gender orgasm gap are education and toys. And let me speak to each of those. Like, the reason why education is powerful is we've all grown up in a culture where, whether it's on film and TV or in books or in pornography, the sex we saw on screen was very focused on penetration. So sort of heterosexual, penis and vagina. Can't believe I'm saying this on a webinar, but awesome. Sex, where sex is defined really as when penetration starts and ends when the person with a penis has an orgasm. And what a lot of the science actually says is that for people with vulvas, penetration will produce orgasm for about 30% of people, but clitoral stimulation will produce an orgasm for about 90%. So because we've grown up seeing one type of sex on screen modeled, if we can re-educate around actually giving people access to higher quality information about their bodies and their anatomy, so that actually you need to combine these forms of stimulation, or you need a lot more of this kind of stimulation in order for both of you to be experiencing as much pleasure as possible. That's really powerful. And then clitoral stimulation is way easier with a toy, and various sets of toys that we've created support around that. So I think it's like a great example of where, to connect those dots, a company like Normal can step in with both products and education to change behavior and outcomes.
And catch people wherever they are on that awareness journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's really important to us, is that in our education, we want to make people feel included. We want to feel approachable. We talk about the voice of Normal being a cool older sibling with a sexology degree. So someone who really speaks to you in a friendly way, neither clinical nor kind of, porny in its voice.
Yeah, love it.
Keep going.
Go.
All right. Oh gosh, just saw the time. Okay,
no, you're good.
I'll rush through.
No, don't rush.
So over the last few years, where we've had about, in fact, just yesterday, we finally crossed 6 million in sales to date, which we're very proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And built a pretty loyal customer base of about 40,000 customers. We're seeing strong repeat customer rates of those as well. And over the last 3 years, we've achieved 60-70% year-on-year sales growth as well. I think I'm conscious of all of the restrictions around not not making any financial claims that are not true, but I'm very comfortable saying we've built one of the leading sexual wellness brands in the Australian market. And that has been by investing not just in product, but investing in educational content, in social media content, in relationships with top creators who can bring huge audiences, a brand halo effect, and social proof. So folks like Abby Chatfield, Hannah Ferguson, Ben and Jazz. And also investing in our community, whether it's through amazing customer support, whether it's through our emails, whether it's through our socials, but making sure that that set of people feel highly engaged and come to know the brand through ideally organic channels, which scale well over time. And then have a great experience with the brand sort of in an ongoing way. And you can see a few of our kind of top highlights there, but I think broadly, where we sit at the moment is we've built a really strong direct-to-consumer brand that is able to acquire customers increasingly through channels that don't cost us anything, or through channels that you make it once and you never have to make it again. So things like education. And that's something where we see there being a really differentiated advantage over time as we scale. And we sort of, part of what we're raising to do is to be able to continue that investment and speed up that investment into those channels, as well as to take what we've built in direct to consumer and leverage that in sort of the B2B world and reach retailers with wider distribution. Kirsten, any questions here before I jump through?
No, as an investor, I love the look of the chart on the left. I also love, if anyone on the call hasn't yet watched the video on Norm's Birchal profile page, you'll see a version of this chart that actually has toys instead of the bar graphs, which
I thought this might be a more sober environment. So
in case anyone's tuning in from work and, your boss works fast, this is a safe for work version of the chart.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what are we raising for, and what are we hoping to do? So there's a few key growth levers that we think will take Normal through scaling the next phase of the business and our impact. And so one of those is expanding B2B partnerships. For anyone who's not into all of the jargons and acronym, D2C is direct to consumer. So that's when someone shops at itsnormal.com and buys a toy directly from us and gets it sent out via us. And then B2B is when, for example, they might discover a Normal product in an online or offline store of beauty, fashion, lingerie, body care, and other, grocery, pharmacy, other adjacent categories where sexual wellness is either already stocked, but with a much more sort of outdated range, or where it's something where it's a clear fit for that audience and it's a growth area for that retailer to start offering those types of products. And we're very excited to be sort of preparing to launch our first major B2B partnership in Q1 of 2026 at the moment. And this is an area where we really want to invest both in people, in capacity, and in inventory to make sure that we're able to support more partnerships like that and to scale that partnership effectively. Unfortunately, I can't speak to what it is beyond that at this point, but hopefully we'll be able to share that.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
Launching soon.
Yeah. And I think another area that's really important for us is expanding repeat purchase lines of product. So I like to describe this as when someone buys a toy, it's often like shopping with something like Warby Parker or buying glasses. Some people buy one pair of glasses and replace it every couple of years. Some people buy 1, 2, 3, 4 for different environments or different needs, and then replace it every couple of years. So what we want to be doing with Normal is complementing what we already have, which is a line of best-selling, very popular, high-margin toy products with more high-frequency purchase consumable products like lubricants, cleaners, and the like. And what we've been working on in recent months has been a newly formulated line of retail-friendly products in that space. So they're designed to not just be able to be sold direct to consumer like we do right now, but to be able to be sold with all of our retail partners, and designed with Australian sexual health experts to be a really best-in-class version of each of those things. We're going to continue doing what we already do well, which is partnering with amazing creators who have unique, iconic, leading voices on these topics to co-create products. And those have been a really important driver of our growth in recent years. I think what's so special about those types of partnerships is that it's not just sort of adding a product to our portfolio, it's also introducing our brand to a whole new audience every time we do that, and it's giving us a huge boost in sales. and a halo effect that sort of allows us to activate many of these other channels. Like, for example, B2B partnerships become much easier when you do those partnerships with really amazing top tier creators. And it also, for a lot of sexual wellness brands, helps you to get around some of the censorship and issues that can occur in a lot of paid marketing channels. So this is a way of accessing audiences at scale too. We're also very keen to continue investing, as I said before, into digital marketing channels where we've already proven out that they're incredibly important to the business, and validating some additional channels where we might be able to scale marketing spend in a profitable way. We have plans to make some key operational hires. So the joke within Normal is that I'm head of way too many functions right now, and I'm a good generalist, but I think that the next phase of having really built out and hit product market fit on, is there a demand for a direct to consumer brand like Normal in Australia, is to actually bring in the right experts across a few of those key functions that allow you to scale effectively. And then finally, while we will always be keeping our free sex education and our research and advocacy completely available, we do think that there are some opportunities in other types of paid digital products in future. And we want to use a little bit of this raise to explore the demand for those and validate how we might bring offerings to market in the paid digital space as well. I think that takes us to Q&A.
Awesome. Oh, so fun. I've already asked a number of my questions along the way, so thanks for your patience in letting me jump in. So I do have a couple of questions to kick off with. Just a reminder, if anyone does have questions that haven't been dropped into the box already, just hit that Q&A box down in the bottom menu bar of Zoom there, and then I can sort of bring them all together with Lucy. So I want to start with you and Georgia, and I've always really loved the way you describe yourselves as the business and the pleasure. Like, I just think that's such a nice encapsulation of what's fun, but also very professional about Normal. And I think it plays through as well to the care and attention to detail that's gone into the product design and the customer facing engagement, but also kind of the your execution and the focus on the business side as well. So how did you two come to be working together? Tell us about your founder origin story and how you came to be.
Yeah, we were both so much younger. We look back at little photos of ourselves and we're like, oh, they were babies.
Look at these babies.
Yeah. So I had been an admirer of Georgia's work from a distance. So Georgia obviously works in clinic and had worked in clinic at that point for a long time with couples, individuals, and groups. But she also I thought in the Australian space was the person doing the best job by far of making sex education content online that felt really approachable, warm, human, expert informed. I was like very obsessed in an unhealthy way. And I sent her a begging, pleading email asking if she might want to talk to me about working on a business together. Which she still brings out sometimes. And but I think she replied to me, thankfully. And we met, and I think the more we spoke about how we viewed the space and what the gap was in this space, I think the more we felt that we were really well aligned in that sense. So I think Georgia and myself, one of the things that we believe most strongly is that you can make great products, but that if you are not supporting people if you're not educating, supporting, and empowering customers with information and even the social scripts to have the conversations they need to have in order to access pleasure for themselves, then you're leaving the job half done. And I think part of why Georgia was keen to work on this business with me was that was something that was a real priority that we wanted to invest in from day one. And we didn't just want advice on product and a bit of endorsement, but we really wanted to create meaningful educational resources.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. And it probably plays into as well my next question around kind of the competitive landscape. Who else is in this market? And you talked before about the kind of porny and corny existing product suite. But maybe you can sort of give us a bit of a lay of the land when it comes to who else, or who do you see as Normal's competitors, and how do you differentiate with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this space really breaks down into kind of two main kinds of competitors. The first one is what I've already referred to a bit, the traditional adult retailers. And when you go onto those websites, or even go into a store, a lot of them have started as like in-person stores and then just kind of put that inventory online, but without necessarily, in my view, taking enough time to think about the consumer needs and where a consumer is coming from. So we're really counter-positioned to those experiences. So where that experience, the marketing might make you feel this is something that you need to be ashamed of, or this is something illicit or explicit, we will try in everything we do, from our visual language to our tone of voice, to make it really clear that this is something that you do not need to be ashamed of. And our product and packaging designs are designed to be things that look beautiful in your home and in your life. And then, the comparison being we have a thoughtfully curated and built out range of products that's designed to meet a lot of needs without being overwhelming or confusing the customer, versus I think a lot of traditional adult retailers, where they really try to compete on having the widest range of products possible and do a lot of heavy discounting on those products as well. Yeah. And so I think, and then I guess for us, like providing that kind of layer of consumer education and information to help people make the right decision and then have a good experience with the product. So really hold the customer's hand every step of the way. And that I think allows us to charge a margin premium and a brand premium on top of what a multi-brand traditional adult retailer is able to do in the space. And then we have the direct-to-consumer world as well, in which there are other brands in Australia, and there's some great other brands doing, I think, really good products. I think probably what differentiates Normal is our emphasis on education and content, and then what the access that uniquely gives us to channels like organic social media growth, to working with top tier creators, to working with big retailers who need a trusted partner to introduce this category into their audiences as well. That you can make a great vibrator, but in our view, that's leaving the job half done. So I think that's the sort of big differentiator for us is education, and then what it means in terms of our ability to acquire customers and our ability to partner.
Yeah, and that growth flywheel that we talked about before as well, around how the educational resources don't just bring customers to the brand, they make those customers more likely to buy because they're understanding how these purchases, how bringing toys into their existing sexual life can, change and improve the way things are working for them.
And even like to give a little example as well, like when we create a new guide, whether it's like what you should expect around changes in the body during menopause and how that can influence sex and what to do about it, that guide gets created by our team, and then it shows up in its first format on our website. Then it goes out as emails to our audience, and then it gets sort of chunked into bite-sized pieces to be educational carousels on Instagram that you can save and share. And then it gets turned into short form video as well. So there's really like a trickle-down effect from the investment we do in high-quality educational resources at the top that actually flows through every channel that we work in as well.
Yeah, like really leveraging that content across all of the different channels.
Yeah, definitely.
Really cool.
Let's where they are with what they need.
Exactly. Let's chat about your customers. So, who are they? Are they all age groups? Are they just in Australia? Like, tell us a little bit about who's buying from Normal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our customers genuinely do range in age from 18 to 80, but like every brand, we do have, I would say, they skew. So our biggest customer groups are Gen Z and millennials. So call that probably between ages of 20 to 45, 50. And what we see there is that we have probably a third of people who have never bought a toy before, a third who have had a little bit of experience buying a toy before, and a third who are self-described as sexperts. And within that group as well, we see a pretty even mixture of buying for solo pleasure versus buying for pleasure with a partner as well. So we sort of are really resonating with the youngest and most progressive consumer demographics in this space. And I think the good news about that is that firstly, those are the early adopters when it comes to the sexual wellness industry, and it gives us a playbook we can then roll out to sort of older generations, but also as that age group go on journeys and age through different phases as well, whether that's sort of menopause or postpartum or having children or long-term relationships, we're actually able to develop new products that meet those needs as well.
Yeah, super cool. I might jump across to some of the questions that have come through
Hey.
from Q&A. So one of the questions was around how do you think you'll share with investors, not just the business side, but also the impact side between what you're building, the commitment to social impact that you have at Normal. It doesn't seem to have as prominent a role on the website. So where do you see that kind of social impact communication coming through, and can we expect to see updates in your investor updates as well?
Yeah, so we think of this as something that we will report on in our investor updates effectively. And so I think there's a few clear metrics, which is views on sex education content, website visits to sex education content, probably like media mentions of research work, recommendations of our free resources by high trust sources. So right now we're recommended by some universities and doctors and healthcare practitioners. We would treat that as something that we see as another channel of impact. So what we anticipate doing is very clear impact reporting to our investors post an offer campaign.
Yeah. And that sort of question of brand trust, I think, the authenticity of knowing that you're investing the share of the sales into these resources, the fact that these resources exist, they're provided for free. Do you look at those brand trust metrics at all separately to other things, or is it kind of incorporated into the broader picture of Normal?
Hmm.
It's a bit of a
Can you say
specific
more?
question, so feel
Yeah.
free to, yeah.
Sorry. No, no, no. I'm interested, but can you speak more to it?
No, I guess it's sort of like that sort of concept of trust, I think, can be quite amorphous when it comes to
Mm,
connecting sort of like the impact of a business with the bottom line metrics. And, like if you look at any kind of corporate strategy, they all would talk about be the most trusted insurance provider, be the most trusted bank, like that kind of stuff. But I guess, how do you think about trust for Normal, and how do you think about maintaining consumer trust in the brand and reinforcing that by what you do?
yeah. Well, I think firstly, there's probably some really important measurements for us that are things like post-purchase surveys. So, whenever someone purchases with Normal, they tell us, how did you find us? Why did you buy with us? Whenever someone repurchases with Normal, they tell us, how did you find us? Why did you buy with us again? So from that, we have a really good longitudinal data set on seeing, what's the impact of the mission and the sex education work into driving people to discover the brand and then to continue with the brand as well. So I think that's probably one area that we would focus on in terms of outcome metrics. But in terms of how we control
I'm
input,
sure as well that sort of like the rate of people accessing the 100-day returns
yeah,
policy and sort of any kind of, I'm sure you ask the same questions if they send things back and want to swap for something else as well. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think for us as well, like looking at what's the like post customer support usage surveys is a really important one. Like we invest quite heavily in having really good and very quick customer support. And I think for us, having a very close to 100% trust and happiness score with our customer support is a really important one. As well as, we even ask like after people shop with us, what was your level of satisfaction with the brand in
mm.
experience? So we have pretty good data points we try to have pretty good data points at every touch point we can.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. That was a much better answer to my badly asked question. So with me.
The
Um,
high level answer is like every touch point should make a customer happier.
mhm.
That is just like a bedrock belief for us.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Just on customers again for a second. So, do you have a bit of a feel, like you obviously showed the growth chart before, which shows successive year-on-year growth over the last couple of years? Do you have a feel for where that growth is coming from? Is it a particular demographic or a particular region?
So right now, I would say our sales are mainly in Australia. So certainly we're seeing really strong uptake with Gen Z and millennials in Australia. We do serve the US, but it's not been something where we've actively marketed at all. It's mainly just serving inbound demand there. Um, and I think in terms of what's driving that growth, a couple of things. I think firstly, the growth of our organic social media accounts. So sort of whether you look at views, reach, followers, engagement, or some combination of those metrics, which is probably what we would recommend. I think a lot of investors look at followers, which is particularly in the modern world of social media, not actually, I would say, the most important. It's much more like what is the quality of engagement and reach from those followers. And engagement and reach from not, sorry, I'm going way too deep in fucking social media metrics. But I think
I'm sure the investor who asked the question will take a lot of comfort from the fact that you clearly do look at these metrics and think about them.
Yeah, we definitely do, follow them very closely. Like we receive 1 million views a month on our social media, and it's not an accident. We follow the results of every piece of content and understand why is someone sharing that, what role does it play in the customer funnel, and how can we make sure that we take every insight from each week and month to make it more effective. But I would say, where is that growth coming from? It's coming from our organic social media. It's coming from our creator partnerships, and it's coming from increases in SEO, as well as selective uses of paid marketing channels like media placement too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So there's a question on here around potential exit strategies. So obviously we can't sort of make promises or give prospective advice on a investment Q&A for retail investor audience, but how do you think about the potential exit pathways for Normal over the longer term?
Sure. I think there are multiple pathways here. I think one area that obviously makes sense is that we're in building a trusted brand and a community and an audience in a fast growing vertical like sexual wellness, that you do have exit opportunities which involve partnerships or acquisitions by consumer, like larger consumer brands or retailers in spaces that are looking to invest into sexual wellness or bring a sexual wellness provider into their sort of portfolio. So whether that's your Unilever, Procter and Gamble style, like big house of brands, whether it's more like someone playing in a beauty, fashion, grocery, pharmacy type category in a market like Australia, I think there's a logical sort of exit in that direction. There is also, I think, and no, actually, sorry, I can't talk about that. But I would say I have certainly seen in the traditional adult retail market, highly motivated retailers looking to make sure that they are not losing the Gen Z and millennial market. And certainly there's I think like a pipeline of acquisition activity starting to happen in those spaces as well. So people who realize that, they're counter-positioned to brands like Normal and are losing market share to brands like Normal. And then I think there's also, really importantly, a world where, we run this as a profitable dividend distributing business as well. This is a space where, and I should say, like, Normal has been sort of growing and sort of, I would say we're like nearing a break-even point, but I think it's really important to note that we are a fast-growing e-commerce consumer brand. And so, we don't want to promise like profitability from early next year forever. But I think it's really important to note that actually, like, given that in this space, it has a pretty strong gross margin profile. Once you hit a certain level of scale, and particularly once you have a good mix of direct to consumer and B2B distribution, it is like very possible to run profitable brands. And I think for Normal, there is an option to do so that allows us to kind of keep pursuing that mission and impact and keep delivering great outcomes to our investors as well. But I'm not promising those outcomes because Birchal tells me I cannot.
Exactly. But I think as well, like, again, from an investor perspective, you showed us the growth chart before, like you've delivered really impressive revenue growth, and yet your customer base is still in Australia. So from my perspective, what I think when I hear that is, well, there's no reason why Normal's products are relevant only to Australian consumers. Like, there's a huge opportunity there based on what you already have to look at sort of global markets as well. So super cool to see. There's a couple of questions that have come through around specific questions around financials. So I might just sort of jump in here and give you a little bit more information about the phase of the process that we're in here. So we're currently in the expression of interest phase of Normal's crowdsource funding campaign. And part of what we're doing in that expression of interest phase is getting feedback from the market. So things like valuation, those kinds of questions haven't yet been set, because part of what Lucy and the team are doing is speaking to potential investors who have expressed interest to get some feedback on how they're thinking about the valuation. So when the offer goes live, part of what will be available at that point is the full offer document. For those of you who've seen crowdsource funding campaigns before, it's a regulated format, and so it will contain all of the usual information around the purpose of the company, the intended use of funds, its financial statements, as well as the current shareholding. So a lot of those specific questions you will be able to answer when the offer goes live, and the full terms of the offer, the valuation, the share price, the current ownership of the business, the last 12 months of financial statements will all be in the offer document. So you'll be able to answer those questions there. All right. There's a question here around investor communication. So again, just to provide a little bit of kind of baseline crowdsource funding information, once Normal does have crowdsource funding shareholders on its registry, it does have a regulated obligation once a year to file its annual financial statements with ASIC and to share those with investors. So that is kind of the baseline level of investor communication. But Lucy, do you have a feel for how you might keep investors informed in the business, and in particular, how you can use the investors to really help you achieve your commercial goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Something that we're really enthusiastic about is we know that a lot of folks who are interested in this fundraise are coming from a perspective of being Normal customers or Normal community members or followers of Normal socials or people who enjoy our emails. And part of what we'd love to do is, we already have that group of people who are sharing this with friends and family and loved ones and gifting sex toys for Christmas. But we want to give that set of people actually an added set of incentives and added upside and a stake in the brand as well. And so I think we really see that as a real benefit of raising partly with our community, not just raising from professional investors as well. So I think that's one area where you would absolutely expect to hear from us with updates about, what we're doing and how you can assist, and lots of fun investor perks as well. We've been doing some quick surveys about those, but I think we're definitely in the world of lifetime discounts. We're definitely in the world of product testing privileges. We're definitely in the world of, I think, making being an investor in Normal a really fun, fulfilling experience as well. And investor comms, I think we will be speaking to impact as well as speaking to financials as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, one more question that I have. So we're kind of coming to the end. If anyone has a last burning question, feel free to drop it in the box. I know if time flies when you're having an awesome discussion. So again, one of the things that sort of having followed you really closely for the last couple of years, I've always found absolutely fascinating about Normal, especially in this era where I think a lot of companies think that having a huge social media advertising budget is the way to deliver growth. You actually don't do social media advertising because the Meta sensitivity filters block your ads. So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about how that constraint, I guess, has really opened up opportunities for you in terms of building that really engaged organic audience?
Yeah, well, I think a good way of summarizing this is the problem that a lot of direct-to-consumer brands experience is that early on, you might be the first into a market, you're running lots of Facebook or Google ads. There's not a lot of other people bidding on those search terms yet. There's not a lot of other people trying to reach the same customer with a similar product. And you can grow really quickly at the beginning using that kind of paid channel where every time you try to reach a customer, you have to pay another kind of increment of cost to do so. And then what typically happens is more competitors emerge, those channels become more and more costly to access. And so brands often find themselves having to like cut their prices, reduce their margins, and also pay more for marketing. So they find that their growth slows and that their unit economics become much less effective over time when they build their brands purely around paid advertising. And also that if you haven't invested in building a strong brand itself, if you've just invested in being good at running paid ads, then it can be very hard to generate real customer loyalty as well. So I think because we've actually in many ways not been able to use a lot of the typical channels that you would use to scale, we've had to become really good at channels that are initially slow to grow, but then over time actually scale much better. And I'll just speak to that quickly. So I've been talking a lot about organic channels. What that effectively means is just that you don't need to pay to reach a customer by like paying Google or paying Meta. You just need to be able to show up either in their feed on social media or show up in their search results on Google organically, because those platforms have sort of rated your content as being highly effective or relevant to that customer. And so for that, once we create that content the first time, we don't pay to show up in those places in that way. And what's really nice is that every time, for example, we add a new follower or someone who sees our content on social media, each of those followers has what's known as a K value, which is essentially like how many other people do they bring with them. So if you picture this as like, your first follower has one friend, your second follower, and so then there's like one person they share it to, but then once you have two people, then it opens up X many more new people, three opens up X many new people, that it's actually, when you are using organic channels, like each new person unlocks a new world of people who product and content can be shared to. And we find that sharing and DMing is a huge part of how we grow as a brand. And then similarly on something like Google, the more that people discover your content, spend a lot of time reading it and seem to have high quality experiences on it, the higher the signal that search algorithm attaches to it. And for example, for us, like because we've had nearly 400 media mentions in the last 4 years, those actually drive really good backlinking and high quality scores for our content as well. So we show up higher and higher in search results as a result of that. So they're channels which get stronger and stronger over time rather than becoming weaker over time.
Super cool. I love seeing you get to the point where you nerd out about metrics, my favorite thing. Couple of quick questions. So if investors want to get involved on the research side, either sort of completing surveys or having input into the research, how might they do that?
Oh, that's really fun. I mean, I think one thing that we already do a ton of is surveying our customer base, and we often offer rewards for people participating in that. So, whether it's like a discount on their next order that prompts someone to make that next purchase, or whether it's, receiving the results and actually getting value just because you find it's really interesting to hear what other people said about, sex postpartum, or it's really interesting to hear what other people said worked for them in terms of orgasms. Like we try and provide value back for people who are participating in our research already. So I think we would definitely be sending out a lot of those opportunities to participate with our investors. And then what we are thinking, as I said before, is for certain tiers of investment, we will also be helping with we will be asking you if you would like to participate as product testers too. So I think that's really, yeah. And I do think that there's also certainly with, when we do market research to shape our new product releases, that's both surveys of our own existing customer base, and we also work with an external agency to do demographically representative Australia-wide surveys as well. And so those help us really get a very good understanding of what are the most common sexual issues or concerns, what have people tried for those things, and where is there a market for us to launch our next product into as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to sneak in one final question. If anyone does have to drop off, just a reminder, we are recording. You can come back to us and watch it afterwards. But when you think about sort of forward product development, there's a question here around sort of some of the challenges for male toys, particularly around sizing and fitting for larger men or smaller men. Is there a space for normal to play in that space? And then more broadly, how do you think about your product development?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I very much resonate with the person who's suggested this question. I think it's certainly an area where we have already a number of our toys which are designed for all anatomies to use. So whether you have a penis, vulva, anything else, everyone can use those toys. There's also a set of toys which can only be used by people with vulvas. There's also a set of toys which are designed for people with penises. But I think what we have seen in the sexual wellness market as a whole is that the earliest adopters have been women and LGBTQ plus people. And actually, there's a real opportunity to create products in the male sexual wellness market that destigmatize using products like sex toys for men. Because I think a lot of the feedback we get from men is, oh, like this is an empowering, like self-pleasure, self-care focused conversation for women. But the conversation around toys for me is this is freaky or deviant or, not something you would show your partner. Or that, it's a threat to your masculinity is a classic other one as well. So I think there's a lot of really good like behavior and attitude change and education work to be done. And I think designing products that also look and feel different is going to be a really, really important lever. And then like specifically with things like, if the size of a toy is too large or too small to fit different anatomies, there's a lot that you can do around making toys adjustable or able to fit different sizes. Also for this specific person, if you, for example, have tried one of the products in our range and it's not right for you, you're very welcome to like reach out to me via Birchal and I can recommend you some other brands where there are a sort of like particularly large or small like fits as well. So, or just reach out to our customer support. Like they're always very happy to make recommendations if we don't have something in range yet.
Oh my gosh, so awesome. Perfect way to end the discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for your thoughtful questions, for your concentration. So we'll leave it there for now. As I mentioned, a recording will be available if you missed the start or if you wanted to share it with anyone you know who wasn't able to join us. The Expression of Interest campaign for Normal will be live for a little bit longer. So if you haven't already, jump onto the Normal page on Birchal, put your expression of interest in so that when the offer does go live, you can be one of the first people to jump in and secure your investment. Thank you so much, Lucy, for being here and for sharing about the amazing Normal story so far. Anyone who has questions can submit them through the Birchal Normal page and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.